Hello, students of Conversation 3. This is week 4, and we're going to rewind one chapter because we skipped chapter 2. Today, we're going to talk about jobs. Now, I want to start out by putting this topic into context because the title, I'm not sure if the title is really serious or if the authors of the book meant it to be, sort of a tongue-in-cheek comment on how hard it is for people to get a job. Because the title of this chapter 2, is "Get a Job!" exclamation mark. One of my friends, he lives in California. He's a pretty interesting, funny individual, and when his son was 4 or 5 years old, he was yelling at his son for doing something wrong, and then he put him outside the door, the front door, put him on the stoop on the front porch, and shut the door and yelled at him. He's only 4 or 5 years old, this boy, and he told them, be useful and get a job. That's a little bit young for a father to make that sort of comment, but I think that little anecdote probably illustrates the general attitude, especially in Korea, but everywhere. But I've lived in Korea for a long time, and I know what Korean parents are like. And Korean seniors. This is why I'm mentioning this to you, because this is Conversation 3, and a lot of you, according to your student numbers, I haven't met you in person, and you're all very young, but many of you are seniors. So in my experience, there's this kind of attitude with Korean seniors, and it's not uncommon in Canada, where I'm from either, that once you are in your senior year, that you should get a job. So in Korea especially, you're in your final semester or your final year, and you're already doing interviews, and you're already looking for jobs, and you're applying. A lot of this language is in the textbook, and you should review it because you probably know the vocabulary in Korean, or if you're from another country, you know it in your own language, but you may not know the technical language in English. So, to apply for something, to graduate, to check a job posting, to search, for career options, all this vocabulary, this terminology is something that if you go back to your own country, wherever that is, or you stay in Korea, you may just use your own language. But a lot of students take this class because they're preparing for something that might involve, even if it's domestic, it may involve communicating with people from another country, and it may involve using English language. So this is going back maybe 10 years to one of my students. I won't name her, but if she ever watches this video, she'll know that I'm talking about her. There was a student I had who said to me, conversation class is really fun. It's very interesting, and I enjoy it, but I really want it to be relevant and practical. And I said to her, well, it is, because I'm teaching you about a lot of different things, and you're just learning English, and passively learning language is always a benefit. But even though I told her that, I thought about it carefully, and I thought to myself, well, originally the purpose of a university was academic, and originally you went to university just to study the things that you wanted to know, something you were interested in, and to expand your horizons, your knowledge, and everything. But the university originally was mostly a place where rich people went because their parents, and that's still the case in a lot of places, you just go there because you're supposed to go to university and learn something, and somebody pays for it, so you just do it. But for most of us, including myself, I'm not from the upper class by any means. I went to university and I realized that I needed my education to do something for me. I didn't want just a piece of paper that said, you know, Jeremy Sullivan, honors Bachelor of Arts or Masters of Arts or whatever. I wanted some practical skills that I could apply. Not necessarily, I ended up being a professor of English, but not necessarily in that field. Just I needed to acquire skills that I could use in a variety of fields. So my former student, she's actually, well, she's been all over the place. She was in Vietnam. Now I think she's still in Nepal. And, she's doing, NGO kind of work internationally. She's very successful. I'm skipping over all of her resume. She went to England. She studied in England. She studied international, she went to a special program, and now last time I heard, she was in Nepal. And that was one of my former students. She studied with me 10 years ago. And she was the one that told me, I think she was the first student to say to me that conversation classes should be more practical. So this is probably the most practical topic we will engage for the entire semester. Get a job is an attitude that older people always have when they talk to younger people. We call the older people, I'm a millennial. You guys are, I think, out of that generation now, but you're on the edge. Anyway, I'm on the leading edge because don't calculate how old I am, but I was born in 1981. So, technically millennials are basically people who were born in the 80s and 90s. And if I'm not mistaken, all of you are born in the 90s, unless you're a freshman, in which case you're not a millennial because you were born in 2000 or 2001. But most of you are probably not first-year students, so you are a millennial like me. And the job prospects for us, it was better for me, quite frankly, because I'm at the leading edge of the millennial generation. When I graduated, job prospects were narrowing, but it was still okay. But it's gotten worse and worse. And there's an attitude from the older generation, which we call boomers, because don't say that. Don't throw that word around too much because it's somewhat offensive. And my father is 66, and he's a boomer. But I don't call him a boomer because I just call him dad. If you call somebody a boomer and they're in their 60s, you're trying to insult them. And they probably won't call you a millennial. They'll probably just call you a crybaby or useless or stupid instead. So this is a lot of name calling goes on between generations, and let's not get into that. But there's some very, very there's some very offensive things that people are saying. I mean, the coronavirus is more dangerous for older people. So I've heard, this expression being passed around. Americans, probably mostly Americans, but other, people as well, Canadians, of course, saying things like boomer remover, which means, older people dying from being infected by the coronavirus, which is a horrible thing to say. So this back and forth thing has been going on for quite a while, but let's just focus on the reality. The reality is unemployment, job opportunities, salaries have stagnated. The situation for young people, which is you and myself, I'm already sort of in the middle of my career, but our options are narrower than they were for people who were born in the 1950s and 1960s and grew up having cheaper education and cheaper housing, for example, and higher wages. Relative to the cost of living. Cost of living has gone up, you know, a significant amount, and the amount of money that people earn, what we call real wages, has not. So, you know, the cost of things has gone up like this, and the amount of money we make has gone up like this. So, you know, boomers had this amount of money and this amount of cost, and this cost is up here now, and this is how much money we make. So it's not fair to say, get a job, just get a job. It's hard. It's a hard situation. I think in Korea, not to get political, but in Korea, the government recognizes this. It's not Moon Jae-in or Park Geun-hye or Lee Myung-bak. You might be surprised. I know all these people, but I've been here for a while. No Moo-hyun. Doesn't matter what party they're in. I think the government in Korea has realized there's some really serious problems with young people. One of them is the fact that birth rate is low, so there's less people. And another one is the fact that companies are hiring less. And it's not up to me. I'm not an economist. I'm not saying how to fix it. I'm just saying that's how it is. So if you're a senior and you're taking this class, I'm going to give you some advice today. I'm not saying it's perfect or that if you follow my formula, you're going to get a job instantly. I'm just trying to share with you an attitude. So what I want you to do, this is what it boils down to, is I'm going to, instead of saying to you, like I did, you may be checking out the channel and seeing what the other conversation classes are doing. In fact, there's a few students that are actually taking Conversation 1 and Conversation 2 or Conversation 3, any combination of those classes simultaneously. So that's part of the reason why I didn't talk about jobs last week, because I don't want to overlap too much. But this is different than the job topic that I did in Conversation 1, I think that's right. I talked about this topic in Conversation 1. In that class, we talked about criteria, but in this class, I want you to focus on a plan, okay? So when I ask you about what kind of job you think you would be suited for, I want you to focus on a plan. And I don't want you to restrict yourself to one job. I don't want you to say the same thing that my son says when I say, what do you want to be when you grow up, Edward? And Edward says, he's 5 years old. His English is all right because he's been listening to me. I say, Edward, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, a police officer. End of conversation. That's not what I'm looking for, because actually the environment, the economy and the environment and the reality that we're looking at, people are really concerned about the coronavirus and everything now, but for the last few years, a bigger concern has been transition from automation to artificial intelligence and robotics. So the fourth industrial revolution is affecting people's jobs. I've heard a lot of people say humanities is not attractive to study in university. Honestly, I don't even know what to say to people who suggest that anymore, because has humanities ever been really that popular? I study history and culture, and I'm not that old. I'm only 38. That's very young for you, those of you who think I'm not young. I'm young. The attitude about humanities since the Industrial Revolution, for the last 300 years, really hasn't been incredibly optimistic. You know, there was a golden age of philosophy and humanities 1,000 years ago, where everybody was studying religion and English language and philosophy and everything else. But I mean, it's been a long time that humanities has not been the focus of the university. I don't think in many countries that are developed that humanities has trumped science, engineering, and mathematics for a long time. So, what do 21st century, has humanities taken a big knock and been less attractive? No, we still need language. Media is, I think, in some ways, humanities is making a comeback because you need logic and you need to marketing and finance and representation and communication are essential skills now. So in some ways, humanities is going to be more important, and creativity is going to be more important going forward than it has been in the last 50 years. That's just my attitude. So taking this class and gaining these skills is going to give you um, the some sort of maybe we call it, I think in Canada the government calls it the module. It gives you it's a skill set. It's a what you need, a lot of different skills, and one of those, that skill set is the whole, array of things that you can do, and one of them is language, and one of them is communication and social skills and everything, and that's what you learn in this class. So you need to be more dynamic. You can't just say, as we did in the past, or not even in the past, but in the previous generation, and what the baby boomers did. When they grew up, they just studied hard, and they found a career, and they took a test, and then they worked for Samsung, or LG, or Hyundai. I'm using Korean examples. But that's really not something going forward that I think you could do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, because those companies probably pay well, and they may be stressful, but they probably pay well, and you have to do hard work, but there's lots of opportunities. So if you want to do that, fine, but not everyone can do that. Not everyone can be a doctor, not everyone can be a lawyer, not everyone can be a government officer or a Samsung Electronics employee. We need to have a diverse economy, and that is healthy for you, and it's healthy for the country, and it's healthy in general, because lots of people don't want to be a Samsung Electronics employee. I've never even considered. I don't care how much money they pay me. I don't want to do that job. So I don't want to be a government officer either. I'm doing what I want to do. And as long as I get paid enough to do what I want to do, then my life is better than it would be. I mean, my life has. I don't want to get personal. My life is not perfect, but one of the things I do like is teaching. So, and I love history and culture and English language. So I get a certain amount of satisfaction. So the bad things and the good things balance themselves out. So this is what I think one of the most valuable things that my professors communicated to me when I was graduating had nothing to do with the fact that I was graduating from McMaster University with a master's degree in English. That's a nice piece of paper that is somewhere in here. I don't know where it is, but it's there. But that's really not important. What was important was the things the lessons that I learned. And one of those lessons was that Professor Goff, and one of my favorite professors, and I just did 16th century English culture yesterday. A very influential person for me. She apparently she got it from her husband, and her husband got it from someone else. But she told me when I was a senior, the key to your professional life, to your future, is figuring out what you like, because sometimes that's a problem. You don't really know what you like. That was one of my issues. I went to university not knowing what I should study. Find out what you like, and then figure out a way to get paid to do that. It's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard in my life. And she told it to me, and it came through channels from other people, but I heard it from her, so I'll give her credit. Um, Now, in terms of what you should do for the assignment, I'm going to say what I want you to do is talk about a plan. Okay, I'm going to say, what are you going to do after university? That's the open-ended question that I'm going to ask you this week for your assignment. So um, you can describe a particular job if you want to, or you can describe skills that you're going to develop. You're going to get licenses, or you're going to get experience. You're going to travel. You're going to volunteer. I don't care. I want to know what you're going to do when you graduate. Okay? So get a job is not a great title for this topic and this, but it's relevant, and it's good for you to look through the material in the textbook. But what I want you to say to me is what you're going to do. It's also possible for you to do, and I recommend this. You have a plan A and you have a plan B. You have a backup plan. You have 2 minutes to tell me what you're going to do, and it's not fixed. It's not a promise to me that you're going to do this. It's just potential. Okay, so you got to come up with ideas. I know that companies are not hiring right now. In fact, a lot of companies are firing people, letting people go, downsizing, because they're trying to reduce costs, because consumption. Our economy is mostly consumption driven, and obviously the amount of consumption is reduced in certain fields. I mean, I'm buying just as much food as I always did, and probably everybody is. But there's certain areas even of that, sector that are being affected. Just the other day I heard, because nobody's going to school, the farmers in Korea who normally, are contracted to provide food for the school lunches, have a whole bunch of food that they're just sitting around that they're trying to get rid of, because the schools aren't buying any of their food, because none of the kids are going to school and eating lunch at school. So these things, everybody needs to eat, but there's a disconnect between, some of the supply channels have been destroyed. I don't want to get into that. This is not my area of expertise, but you know what I'm saying. Actually, there is something called a farmer box, and I ordered one the other day. I haven't got it yet, but it's really cheap, so I recommend it. Tell your parents if you're not going to order it yourself. But there's these farmers have a lot of food, and they're trying to distribute it through different channels, so you can get a discount if you look it up. I'm not great at using Naver, but Koreans are, so here's a little tip for you. If you want to get cheaper, healthy vegetables from Korean farmers, then support them and order the farmer box. You have to look it up in Korean. I don't really know how to do it very well, but that's what you should do. When you want to get a job, there's a variety of different ways to go about it. Of course, these days online applications are very common. I've gotten jobs from applying online. I've sent emails and shared my resume with as many people as possible in order to get work, and you should do that. I will teach you one more really good expression that it comes from. I never heard it until my best friend back home in Canada said it to me. Actually, his girlfriend at the time, she got let go. She got fired from a job, and I remember him distinctly. I remember him saying to me, "Yeah, she lost her job, so she's going to look for a job." And he said, instead of saying "look for a job," he said, "She's going to hit the pavement." Hit the pavement. Now, hit the pavement actually literally means punching the ground, like the street. That doesn't make sense. Hit the pavement means going outside, walking around, and physically giving your resume. to HR, human resources. So what he actually meant was she's going to go around with her resume and give her resume to different companies and try and find a job. That's an expression. I've never heard it anywhere else, so I'm going to say it's Canadian. It's probably not. It's probably American, but whatever. We'll say it's Canadian. Hit the pavement means go out and look for a job. You don't necessarily have to actually step on the pavement, step on the street, and physically take your resume around. It just means really trying hard to look for a job. So this is my last piece of advice for you today. Other than please do your assignments and hand it in next week, as usual, half a page. Tell me about your plan after graduation. But after you're done this course, after you're done this semester or this year, if you're a senior, even if you're not finished yet, if you really want a job, hit the pavement. That's how you get a job. Be active. And I mean, don't listen to the older people that are saying, oh, you're lazy and you're stupid and you're not good enough to find something. But I mean, there is a point there. The underlining point is like, you need to go out there and you need to be active, and that the job is not going to throw itself at you. This is not the environment that we live in. The jobs are not going to, not going to graduate and have 10 different job offers right away. That's not going to happen. If that happened to your parents, that they're lucky. I mean, I know some Korean men who are not women, but men, and that was typical, a long time ago. But one of my former students, he's a 65-year-old computer programmer, his computer science major. When he graduated from Chungnam National University, he was one of the first graduates for computer science. There was at least 10 companies begging him to work for them, right? Because the class of computer science in 1965, that's not right, 1975, I think, is when he graduated, sorry. But 1975 or 1978 or whatever, late 70s when he graduated, that class was tiny. And the demand for computer programmers and computer science majors was huge. Even now, if you graduate and you're a computer programmer, you probably find a job easier than an English major. But you know what I'm saying? When you get out, you got to find that job. They're not going to be like people knocking on your door saying, please, please work for me. So hit the pavement and get a job. That's the title of the chapter. Okay? So do your homework, and we will talk. Hopefully, we will be able to arrange a live lecture and chat in the near future. I'm looking at maybe a 2-week timeline for that. There's a distinct possibility that the midterm will not happen, but we'll discuss that in the coming weeks. So for now, that's it. Please do your assignments and email it to me, and keep me updated on any situation that as things change. Feel free to send emails to me if you have any problems. That's it for now. Good night. See you next week.